Welcome to the video. Constructionist Personal Growth. Practicing fluidity creates fluidity. My name is Dr. Stephen Bacon. I'm a clinical psychologist in Santa Barbara, California, and I've spent the past decade writing books and researching exactly how psychotherapy works. The Elephant and the Rider. Jonathan Haidt's model of mind, the elephant and the rider, has been introduced in a previous video. In this model, the conscious mind is the rider, and the unconscious mind is the elephant. Haidt, however, sees the unconscious mind as much larger and more influential than Freud's unconscious. He agrees that the elephant includes all the traumas, memories, and mislearnings championed by Freud, but he also includes all the other unconscious capacities revealed by neuroscience. For example, there's a study on female attractiveness where male college students rated pictures of females on an attractiveness scale. For the next set of ratings, the eyes of the females were photoshopped so that they were more dilated. As a result, the pictures were rated significantly higher in attractiveness. The conscious mind was unaware of the dilated eyes, but the elephant knew. The automatic unconscious. Another example of the unconscious functioning of the elephant is connected to driving. Most experienced drivers can drive across town and have no memory of what they saw or experienced while driving, especially if they are deep in thought. They are confident, however, that if the driving becomes demanding, the elephant will send them a signal to pay attention, and they can return to conscious driving awareness. Haidt tells us that the elephant is much more powerful than the rider. Therefore, the rider cannot muscle the elephant into obedience. Rather, if the rider has self-knowledge, which includes knowledge of the dynamics of the elephant, the rider becomes capable of influencing and gradually retraining the elephant. Problems with elephant training. Successfully retraining the elephant is, of course, one way to describe the primary goals of psychotherapy and personal growth. Everyone is understandably focused on getting the unconscious mind out of bad habits, or resolving its adherence to dysfunctional feelings, or getting it to support healthy risk-taking and new challenges and adventures. The problem with retraining the elephant is that the rider needs to be free, to be sufficiently disidentified with the elephant. This state is unfortunately difficult to achieve because most riders are identified with the elephant. Put pragmatically, most people believe that they are their traumas, problems, deficiencies, and issues, as well as their achievements and successes. Many people overweight their failures, and as a result, have poor self-esteem and practice inner and outer self-deprecation. The assumptions of the elephant are constructed. It stands to reason that the rider is a poor trainer, as long as they identify with the elephant. This is particularly true if the elephant carries lots of shame and guilt. These factors lead to conclusions like, I'm bad and broken and probably unfixable. In such cases, the rider becomes impotent. How can they influence the elephant in a positive direction when the elephant has convinced them that the situation is dire at best and hopeless at worst? The reason that constructionism is so helpful for personal growth is that all of its teachings demonstrate that the beliefs and assumptions of the elephant are constructed. Hence, the rider has the ability to disregard such belief as essentially unreal and made up. This robs these beliefs of their power and influence. Mindfulness. Those people who have studied and practiced mindfulness and meditation will recognize the model of the rider and the elephant. In mindfulness meditation, one is asked to be the observer, pure awareness. The meditator begins by watching the breath and subsequently cultivates awareness of everything, thoughts, sensations, feelings that move across the sensorium. The primary revelation provided by meditation is that these factors are other-generated. I am the pure awareness of the observer. The mind creates experiences on its own. In Buddhism, these experiences and the mind that generates them is called non-self. The Buddhists argue that human suffering is due to identification with mind, with non-self. The solution is identification with the pure consciousness of the observer. Jonathan Haidt agrees. He calls the watcher the rider and the mind the elephant. Personal growth occurs relatively easily when an individual identifies with the rider, not the elephant. Universality and usefulness. It is easy to find these two factors, mind and self, in virtually all other spiritual and mystical traditions. This is not accidental. Haidt intentionally made a mental model that accurately fits the discoveries of a variety of spiritual traditions. This analysis sounds as if the elephant is the foundation for all suffering. And, in a way, that's true. However, it's important to note that the unconscious mind has been developed via evolution as our primary helper. Obviously, its first job is to keep us alive. To that end, the elephant overweighs risk and danger and underemphasizes rewards and successes. Its second important job is to automate regular activities so that the conscious mind is free to use its power to reflect on higher challenges. Not only are things like driving automated, or our reactions to disgusting things, like a hair that falls into food, but our social reactions become automated as well. We are all victims of social programming, stereotypes, and facile judgments. Retraining the elephant. Regardless of its evolutionary usefulness, the Buddhists are correct when they locate the source of suffering in the elephant. The main problems in life, unwanted feelings, compulsions, dysfunctional life strategies, all originate in the elephant. To that end, all personal growth entails retraining the elephant. Recall that Haidt tells us that the elephant is much more powerful than the rider. The rider cannot muscle through the elephant. The elephant is much stronger than a horse with a bit in its mouth. Since force is futile with the elephant, the enlightened rider resorts to a gradual and consistent attempt to reprogram the elephant. Such an approach can be called Apollonian change. It's also possible to change the elephant suddenly and non-linearly. These kinds of epiphanies can be called Dionysian change. Beginnings. The single most important place to begin is to determine that one's sense of self-identification has shifted from the elephant to the rider. It is difficult and slow to attempt to change the elephant when one is identified with the elephant. For example, if I believe that I am an angry person or an anxious person, then I am identified with the elephant. Conversely, when it is clear to me that my elephant has been programmed to be anxious, but I'm not anxious, then I have the opportunity to do retraining. Shame and guilt are the dark stars here. They insist that my mistakes and failures in the past prove that I am a broken or diminished or dysfunctional person. As long as I identify with these mistakes and failures, significant growth is very difficult. The solidity of constructed reality. Constructionism teaches us that our inner reality and our social reality are fluid. They lack solid qualities and instead are dependent on beliefs. What makes constructed reality tricky is that it mimics fundamental reality. If someone says that premarital sex makes an adolescent girl sinful, and they believe that idea, they really feel that the girl is a sinner. And when the girl herself believes it, she becomes a sinner. From the outside, it is easy to understand that the sex-sinner connection is constructed. When one believes it, it appears to be a law of nature. Those people who have studied and understood constructionism are not only freed of the sex-sinner issue. In theory, they are capable of deconstructing all feelings and ideas. This sense of fluidity and freedom allows one to identify with the writer. Prerequisites. All the preceding constructionist videos have the goal of establishing this sense of fluidity, freedom, and the ability to identify with the writer. This video is for people who are identified with the writer and ready to work with the elephant. If you are still identified with the elephant, please review the preceding videos. Being identified with the writer doesn't imply the elephant is healed. For example, I might say, my elephant is convinced I am a depressed person, but I understand that myself is untouched by that history of depression. Or, I have made significant mistakes in my life, and my elephant feels shame about them. I understand that feeling shame about mistakes is a pre-programmed choice. I reject that programming and choose to see my past experiences without prejudice. The beginning stage is characterized by the elephant having lots of dysfunctional beliefs that appear to be solid truths, and the writer disidentifying from those beliefs and feeling free of their problematic attributes. The elephant still believes, but the writer feels liberated. Be like a therapist. Retraining the elephant essentially means that the writer acts like a therapist toward the elephant. This implies that you are going to use the Jerome Frank model, with its attendant explanations and prescriptions, to change the elephant. Every intervention will be preceded by an explanation to the elephant of why it has certain problems and why passing through a set of prescribed actions will heal it. As with therapy, the key is belief. If the elephant believes the explanation and the prescription, it will change as it executes the prescribed actions. For example, if the elephant is convinced that certain problematic feelings, like fear of intimacy, are related to parental actions, then writing and reading a heartfelt letter at the parent's grave might be the retraining assignment. Social reality. The truthfulness of interventions is always an issue for the constructionist therapist. It can be difficult to believe in an explanation and an intervention when one knows that the mental world is constructed and most psychological ideas and feelings are equally constructed. This dilemma can be resolved by understanding the concept of social reality, a reality that exists between constructed reality and fundamental reality. Social reality refers to a culturally endorsed way of defining reality that is so compelling that it becomes a cornerstone belief of a culture. In Western psychological culture, the cornerstone belief is the concept that human problems are due to traumas, neglect, poor modeling, and maladaptive programming. The solutions are connected to releasing emotions, cultivating right thinking, insight, and compassion forgiveness. In another culture, mental health social reality might consist of the assumptions that problems are due to spirit possession and solutions consist of exorcism procedures. The fluid truth of social reality. When a constructionist therapist uses the read a letter at the grave intervention, they know they are participating in a social reality that is endorsed by both the client and the client's culture. They also know that they could have come up with a different, equally effective intervention, as long as the client believed it to the same degree. For example, they could have referred the client to group therapy, where other clients would model effective intimacy and encourage the client to experiment more with intimacy. Both the group therapy and the letter intervention operate in the same shared Western psychological social reality, even though they are different interventions from different schools of psychology, one psychodynamic and one humanistic existential. The constructionism lets the therapist pick from any intervention, knowing they are all rituals, as long as the interventions are equally believable. Most importantly, the therapist can believe in the intervention from the standpoint of social reality, even though they ultimately see it as constructed. Social truth and the Dionysian leap. In personal growth, with the writer and the elephant, things are a bit more complicated. The writer is a constructionist, and the elephant is like an unawakened cultural member. The elephant strongly believes in social reality. Hence, interventions in that tradition are appropriate and effective. However, if the writer is so confident in constructionism that it can say something like, I have so much confidence that my intimacy problems are constructed and programmed that I simply want to act as if the problems no longer exist for me. I'm impatient with the idea that I need to read a letter at a grave. If the writer can feel this way strongly, the door is open to simply leap into a higher level of intimacy without doing intervening activities. The letter is Apollonian change. The constructionist insight can lead to Dionysian change. The proof is in the experience. If the leap is successful and it holds up in daily life testing, well and good. If not, return to the letter at the grave. Interventions. To illustrate these principles, here's another example. Imagine a person who feels they have a problem with shyness, subassertiveness. They could use an ego state ritual and imagine that their elephant had different parts. One part might believe that being small and insignificant was the safest way to operate in the world. Another part wanted to protect the person from injustice and believed that it is important to stand up for oneself. And a final part was goal-oriented and wanted to make progress both in the relational arena and the professional one. This final part believes that teamwork, cooperation is important, but so is individual actualization. This person could start writing letters back and forth from one part to another. The ideal solution would be for the two more assertive parts to convince the safety part that assertiveness actually increases safety and success. If the person took their assignment seriously and actually wrote the letters, feeling like they are the discrete parts, any new internal agreements would be reflected in changing outward behaviors and feelings. Constructionist characteristics. This intervention by itself isn't particularly constructionist. However, if done by a constructionist who is aware of underlying constructionist principles, the intervention will both go more easily and more powerfully. Even more importantly, the attitude behind the intervention can transform it into a constructionist ritual. First, the constructionist is optimistic and aware that any believable intervention works. This ego state intervention is fine and workable, but the elephant might have been asked to write a letter to the parent most identified with either criticalness or subassertiveness, a writing exercise similar to the last example. The choice is simply determined by what feels more attractive, more practical, and more true. The optimism arises from the knowledge that the beliefs targeted for change are mere constructions. Second, when one internalizes the concept that anything works, there is the implication that the problem being addressed isn't that serious. Serious problems require serious and complex solutions. Something that can be solved by anything can't be too difficult. Seeing fluidity creates fluidity. The practice of constructionism creates more fluidity in one's reality. The more that you can see that your issue can be treated equally well by very different approaches, the more you understand that what is moving the elephant is ritual, not technique. The more you understand the power of ritual, its strengths and weaknesses, the more you understand that what you are changing are beliefs, mental structures that appear substantial but are actually ephemeral. The more you see these ephemeral structures changing, the less fear you have of them, and the more you see the entire process as a dance that is important and beautiful, a dance that is both serious and inconsequential, a dance of healing and growth. Practicing fluidity begets more fluidity. The process. Identify the areas of concern, whether they are undesirable emotions, dysfunctional cognitions, various forms of fears and contractions, or even illicit expansions, such as narcissism and sociopathy. Disidentify, dissociate from the elephant. Identify as the rider, pure consciousness, your essential self. Develop an elephant intervention. Copy a ritual you have heard of from psychotherapy or personal growth. Even better, design one of your own that particularly fits your elephant. As you apply the ritual, practice an attitude of confidence and optimism. You're only changing constructive beliefs that have no real substance. The great dance. The attitude cultivated behind and throughout this process can be called dancing with the abyss. All constructionism eventually points toward the abyss, that empty space where all form is gone. In Hinduism, this deconstruction process is manifested in the form of the god Shiva, the one who cuts through all delusion. In psychotherapy and in personal growth, We are in the change business. In that business, cutting through obstacles, fear, and delusion is our best friend. But deconstruction goes only so far. Navigating in pure emptiness is impossible and terrifying. Sartre called it nauseating. For this, we need to embrace a path. Each step on a path with heart participates in its terminus. Feeling emptiness allows us to cut through. Feeling the terminus allows us to have direction and purpose. The situation is hopeless, but not serious. Paul Václavic popularized this Central European saying. It is a companion to dancing with the abyss. The constructionist who seeks personal growth is familiar with the sense of hopelessness that often accompanies our own neurotic processes. These are real feelings. However, constructionism shows us that this reification of problems is a paper tiger, one that can collapse under its own weight if correctly approached. Hence, the situation, while feeling hopeless, is paradoxically not serious. The more we practice with an underlying understanding, the more we feel this. Seeing fluidity creates fluidity, and dancing with the abyss allows us to work with personal growth in a way that is both graceful and effective.